Sunday service with the Atheist Reformation. Joining me once again is my co-host Harry and his cat, which I think he said his name was Bronson.
Yes.
So, how are you doing this week, Harry?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Harry's doing block walking for his political affiliation later on today, which is why we're filming hella early versus last week when we filmed hella late. So,
Out
once
there
the
today, knock on all the doors that are for people that didn't go to church today. So,
yeah, and we'll be consistently going for the noon time slot once the political primaries are out of the way after March 3rd here in Texas. So you'll start seeing a bit more consistency after that.
yay. And up until then, jump on the Yang Gang. Woot, woot.
Yes, that just went down in flames.
Oh, well, maybe with $1,000 a month, he'll be able to rebuild it.
I don't know. We'll see how things go for him. A lot of people are not super duper happy about the fact that he has had to drop out of the race.
Had
But
to.
yeah, but
Much lower rankings that have not dropped out. He just had
true, true. The lower there are lower rankings that instead of dropping out like they should have, they have suspended their campaigns.
Oh yeah. Well, I think there's 8 people that are there, and 3 of them have never been on the debate stage.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's true.
I don't know who's in last place, but I'm rooting for you, buddy.
I don't know if you see some of Tim Pool's videos. It's looking more and more like if what?
Tim Pool's the last place contender for the Democratic Party?
No, I was saying if you look at Tim Pool's YouTube channel, it's looking like Bernie Sanders is a front runner, and that could possibly spell certain doom for the Democrats come election this year. But we'll see how things go.
I know this isn't like a political podcast, but you've heard the big news of Bloomberg wants Hillary as his running mate.
I hadn't heard that, but now that I have, I wish I hadn't.
I saw the meme, Rick and Morty, where it's like that sounds like suicide, but with extra steps.
Wow. Oh man. I mean, it's like I mean, out of all the Democratic candidates that I've seen the past year and a half or so, the one that I liked above all the others was hands down Tulsi Gabbard. She's the one that seemed the most sensible.
She's still in it.
Okay. And yeah, no, Mike Bloomberg, I'm sorry, he was an idiot. He was an idiot 4 years ago. He's an idiot today.
I think he has 0% votes, but he's still running. And Gabbard has like 1.5% of the votes.
Yeah, if Bloomberg attains any standing in the polls, it'll be through the power of money, where he just simply outspends everybody.
Have you heard about the issue where he was buying off Instagram accounts?
No, I hadn't. We'll have to. We may have to explore that at some point. Oh boy. But yeah, no. Wow, buying Instagram accounts. I mean, and for those who may end up wanting to say, "Oh, that's not necessarily a bad thing," I have seen plenty of people who who go completely apeshit if they find out that one of their favorite people or whatever is buying Instagram accounts, buying fake followers, either on Instagram or Twitter to make themselves seem more popular than they actually are, buying themselves subscribers on YouTube. I mean, all of those things are bad. It's representing yourself falsely.
Yeah, it's for his situation. It's more that he's petitioning and paying off influencers to make memes for him. So he's like getting
Wow.
spawned. Yeah, like the biggest one that did it, I think, was F Jerry, which is pretty well known.
I don't get on Instagram much at all, so yeah.
Oh yeah, F Jerry and Tank Sinatra were two of them, which are pretty big influencers, and they post a lot of memes. And they got paid off by Bloomberg to make some memes, and all the people on Tank Sinatra's page is like, "You effing sell out! How dare you!" And the meme was really weak. It was like really bad. It was just like, Bloomberg, will you make a meme for me? And it's like me, and it just shows a picture of Bloomberg, and it says Bloomberg under it.
Well, I mean, he did what he was paid to do.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and start jumping into the stories today. And
Something remotely religious based.
well, no, actually all three of them are religious based, it seems. So the first one is we're going to talk about stricter codes of conduct to prevent proselytization. And as always, just like the ticker says, all articles are linked in the video description below. And we're looking at a story from The Independent.
So
where say what?
Is this in Britain?
It might be, yes. State schools an open door for evangelical groups to push creationism, warns study. This is coming from the National Secular Society, calling on the government to introduce stricter codes of conduct. Now, this is, albeit a rather old story from from October of 2013. However, information like this does still need to be discussed because I do believe this is still an ongoing controversy, just kind of in the background in the UK. So, evangelical Christmas groups.
At Christ Christmas.
Right? Evangelical Christian groups committed to converting young people are being allowed access to children in state schools because of the marginalization, of religious education in a new study warns. What is with these ads just like butting right into where the actual story is? I'm really annoyed by this.
I'm just still stuck on evangelical Christmas groups, and I'm just imagining it that like, here's your present, open it or you're going to hell. Or is it like, have you
the first Noel, Johnny scared of hell, or something like that. The report by the National Secular Society calls on the government to introduce a stricter code of conduct to prevent visiting groups proselytizing during religious education lessons. The report claims that the squeezing of RE in the curriculum in the absence of trained RE teachers has created an open door, quote unquote, for evangelical groups to push creationism and their own brand of sex education. Head leaders warned that a line is crossed when religious theories, such as creationism, were taught as if they were scientific theories. I agree. However, groups named in the report were quick to deny any suggestion that they were proselytizing. The group says the low priority given to religious education and collective worship in many schools, combined with the short supply of qualified religious ed teachers and general pressure to provide sufficient teaching hours, provides an ideal environment for evangelical groups to exploit. As one Christian organization that provides assemblies states on its website, meeting the standards set down by the government on collective Christian worship and religious education can become an extra burden in a busy teacher's day. The assembly angels are here to help. The report recounts the activities of one evangelical visitor called Matt the Christian. How original. Who is alleged to have told pupils that there wouldn't be any pedophiles if there was more celibacy. Yeah, if that person actually said that, that person's an idiot.
I mean, technically, there wouldn't be.
Celibacy just means abstinence from marriage.
Does it? I think that's.
Hang on. Let's go for the Google foo.
I think that might be like the Catholic definition.
No, well, the Catholic definition combines chastity and celibacy into the state of abstaining from marriage and sexual relations. But at its core, priestly celibacy or Catholic celibacy talks about both of those things. But initially, when you look at the older definitions of celibacy before the Catholic redefinition of it, it literally just meant that you didn't get married.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, evidence collated for the report, evangelism in state schools, indicated that it was not just faith schools that were opening the doors to evangelical groups. Little warning was given of visits, thus threatening a parent's human rights to insist that their child's education was in conformity with their own religious and philosophical convictions. Okay, so I'm not familiar with how they handle things over in the UK as far as religious education and parental choice over their children's education goes. But yes, I would definitely have an issue with it, especially here in the US, if for whatever reason, out of nowhere, a preacher or someone was allowed to come into a school and start trying to teach my children things. I would have an issue with that.
Just things in general.
Yes, even just things in general. I would have an issue with that, at least starting out, until they could demonstrate that they were not teaching things with a religious bent to them. But if they're a preacher coming in as a guest to teach at a school, that's pretty much a guarantee that what they're bringing is designed to be with a religious bent to it.
See, that's what I don't understand on this is because
there's a difference between, okay, you're at school and your teacher also happens to be a preacher or a pastor, and if they're focusing on just teaching the curriculum first and then they don't bring the preachy nonsense in, I'm fine with that. But like inviting guest speakers over or faculty inviting guest speakers over because they agree with their religious background or their religious beliefs, no, there's no place for that in a school, especially a public school.
So what exactly are they supposed to be teaching? Because I'm confused. It sounds like
they're talking about religious education in state schools. So, I mean, I would have to look at more about this. I mean, I understand a little bit about religious education in the UK, at least a little bit. I've got a couple of friends who have gone through some stuff, and they don't do full on like theological. It's not taught like a theological seminary or anything like that. It's not taught from a background of belief in particular. Though there are religious education units as part of a student study over there, and some of that is exposure to world religions, or if the students' parents' preferred religious background has some kind of restriction on things, then they are taught only in that regard, in that field of study or that belief structure, versus exposure to multiples in a non-preaching manner to kind of educate students on what the religion is, what they purport, and all that fun stuff. And so, what this seems to be talking about more than anything else is they worry about evangelicals who are not properly trained religious educators in their governmental sense and actually preaching and proselytizing with the intent of conversion, which that is not allowed. And they're not allowed to attempt to teach on topics which have nothing to do with religious education. For instance, teaching that evolution is false has nothing to do with religious education. Or teaching that vaccines are bad is not relevant to any religious education. So
I would agree with you on that for a couple of reasons.
yeah. So the report lists 18 evangelical Christian groups with access to schools and warns of concern over the appropriateness of the message being delivered by a number of external visitors to schools. The Secretary of State for Education has made it clear that the teaching of creationist views as a potentially valid alternative to scientific theory should have no place in a 21st century publicly funded school. Agreed. External visitors to schools will be regarded as figures of authority, particularly by young pupils. When fundamentalist Christians express their sincerely and passionately held belief in the creation story, few children are likely to differentiate between what is being presented as a belief and what is being taught as a valid scientific theory. And so that seems to be about the gist of it.
So here's something that's my concern is that you're inviting these people over so that they can tell you what their religious beliefs are for the purpose of sharing religious education so you know what different religions think. But then you only want them to talk about their
They want them to talk about their
accepted.
doctrine, not about their views on science and things like that.
But it's not a science class. It's not like they're bringing them into chemistry to talk about like their religious view of chemistry. This is a religious education course. This is strictly talking.
Right. It's strictly talking about the doctrine of the religion.
Yeah.
Not as so for the person coming in that's being invited in to do this, starting to talk about creationism and evolution and this, that, and the other is complete nonsense. There's no reason for them to bring that up in the first place, but they do.
But creationism is a part of doctrine.
No, it's not.
Is that if you're tailoring what discussions can be had about what parts of your theology, then you're really not going to give an accurate impression of what the religion is. So why even have the class?
I agree. I don't think that there should be a class. I don't think there should be a class about religious education in any public school. I mean, okay, if it wants to be discussed in short form in, say, perhaps an intro to philosophy class, or you discuss the history of religion in a particular culture in a world history class or something like that, that's fine.
I mean, teaching kids not to talk about religion and not to talk about politics has pretty much led, and I'm completely ripping this off of a Facebook meme I've seen a lot of people share, by the way. I'm not claiming this is my own quote. Has led to no one being able to discuss religion or politics civilly. It has not led to a greater amount of respect for diversity of opinion and thought.
I agree. Although I'm one of those people that's like, okay, we should have a civil discussion, and that people should be respected. Ideas and beliefs, you don't have to respect them.
I think they just need to be upfront about what it is that they want, because it sounds like what they want is to say that they're being inclusive and sharing religious views and having a religious education course, but at the same time, they want the religious education course, the status quo policy of the government or whatever the controlling view is. So they want the course just to be there to say that they're showing diversity, but to actually reinforce the ruling party. It seems like they're trying to have a cake, and it seems like it's either going to be a useless course that doesn't teach you anything, or if anything, the course could actually be more harmful by giving a skewed perspective.
I agree with you, especially on the skewed perspective part of things.
Yeah.
So, moving on into the next story. This is kind of bringing things further in, because this story comes from about a year after this, and we see a snippet of what's happened since then, and you might find some of this interesting. Headline is, new laws are needed to prevent creationism indoctrination in independent schools, says top science educator. So this is from a BBC presenter, Professor Alice Roberts, saying that regulations must now be expanded to include private schools. And this comes not even a year after that other story. Remember, that one was October of 13. This one's January of 14. And again, the independent. Y'all need to figure out your damn website. I swear, it's the stupidest thing. And it didn't used to do this. So, new laws are needed to crack down on the teaching of creationism as an alternative to evolution in private faith schools. Alice Roberts, the president of the Association for Science Education, is warning. Professor Roberts, who represents the BBC program The Incredible Human Journey, says regulations banning the teaching of creationism in science lessons in state schools must be extended to the independent sector to stop the indoctrination of children. From this September, children in England will be explicitly taught evolution from primary school onwards as part of the science curriculum. But Professor Roberts of Birmingham University argued that too many young people were still at risk of being indoctrinated by religious organizations. There should be regulation that prevents all schools, not just state schools, from teaching creationism because it is indoctrination. So, this is in large part the view here.
And is this also for religious education, or is this for something different?
This is not for religious education in particular. This is for how science is taught in schools. In private schools, yes. Now, I know here in the U.S., to be a private school, at least the majority, some states you can't receive any state or federal education funding. Other states you can receive some, but not over a certain percentage, that sort of thing. I don't know what the regulations are in the UK. Because if they are receiving, or if they are just private schools that receive a ton of federal funding, then I can see the government making regulations, or their state Department of Education, however, making regulations on science education. I can see I can see the perception of authority they think they would need to get that done. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I could see where they might actually have the authority to do so.
I guess my question is, so are we saying that in a biology class you can't teach that creation is a fact? You have to teach that that evolution would be the scientific view, or are we saying that in a Bible study class in that private school or in their theology class that they could not teach creationism?
No, this article is specifically talking about science education. It's not talking about religious studies or anything like that. This is just talking about the science class.
Yeah, I guess that's the only part that I didn't really catch up on, is because I knew they were talking about how science is taught, but I didn't get talking about specifically science courses. Whereas in the other article, they were specifically talking about religious education courses.
Right, but that was because they were having an issue with specific non-qualified non-qualified individuals being used as religious educators, whereas this is talking about essentially the authority of a private school to teach the curriculum they choose in either in all subjects or just a few.
I mean, as I think if there's a state accreditation or curriculum that has certain points that it has to be followed, and you're teaching everything that's in there, then I don't see what the problem with teaching anything in excess if your family is paying a special price or tuition so that you can get that additional material, because they're going to have to cover all of the other material as well
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to get that accredited status in education.
True. But again, without knowing some more specifics about accreditation and how they actually govern private schools in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of remains to be seen overall.
So if you're British and you're watching this, please chime in during now or the conversation part,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it might actually be your evening and a reasonable hour for you to actually be watching this.
That's quite possible. And we always want more viewers, that's for sure. And of course, hey, mini celebration time. We are at 51 subscribers now and keeping on going. So,
We haven't even
yeah.
done 51 shows, so we're picking up more subscribers than broadcasts.
Hi. Let's keep it going, I guess. So I don't know, bringing that over. So let's bring that over to the discussion as far as the United States. Say this article came out in the U.S. What would your thoughts be on it? And
Uh,
it was a science. Say it was okay. So this is a BBC presenter for science. So um, Bill Nye. We'll just use him. He's one of the biggest science communicators in this country. Coming out
I
and saying
do
something like that.
title science communicator and not scientist.
Say what?
I said I do like that you gave him the title science communicator and not scientist.
Well, no, he was a mechanical engineer. He worked for Boeing, but I mean, aside from the Bill Nye the Science Guy show, he's not been involved in any research. So he's a science communicator.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like
even
acting.
he refers to himself as a communicator. He didn't even refer to himself as a scientist. I mean, it's evident in the show, the Science Guy. Even though I think that was probably more for a clever rhyme scheme, but hey,
Yeah. So the question is basically how we feel about this being in America.
yeah, sure.
Um, I mean, I'm going to have a different perspective, not just because I'm religious, but because my education is on sociology and religious groups
Mm-hmm.
as it pertains to political science.
Okay.
Uh, so I think that having an honest discussion about religion is very important. Um, and you're going to hear stuff that you don't like in that honest discussion. And I'm not sure what the age group is that this should be geared at. I mean, if you're talking with like 8-year-olds and you're giving just basic fundamentals, I mean, that's one thing. But if you're talking with like high schoolers and you're going to cherry pick what's allowed to be discussed and what's not allowed to be discussed, then there's no point to it really.
Uh,
So,
in all honesty, I would be completely in favor of, we age gate all sorts of content.
yeah.
I mean, I, I, I'm not necessarily saying age gate religion, but I would say that there should be an age gate, say in a public school, as to whether or not you're going to start exposing kids to religious teachings and things like that. I think they should have a firm grasp of life sciences and world history, mathematics, and maybe a little bit of physics. And then, if they wanted to introduce a course like that, say in high school, okay, that's fine. Uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, prior to high school, there's no need for any kind of religious education to me, because that's something, the whole spiritual guidance thing, we, in this country at least, we've termed that to be a First Amendment issue, and that should be handled by parents and by a community, not by a school.
Unfortunately, the way that our society is run is that school is our community. We've institutionalized interaction and social involvement.
This is also true. I mean, we've become even more addicted to the use of social media and things like that, and we call that social interaction. And to some extent it is, but I mean, I can honestly attest that, like, I have friends, I have people that I know that will say some of the most ridiculous things on places like Facebook or Twitter. But you catch them face to face, 99 times out of 100, they're too scared to even open their mouth. They just won't talk about it unless they can hide behind that keyboard.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, that's fine. If a person has social anxiety, that's one thing. I'm not ragging on that. What I am ragging on is people who
There's a
don't
difference.
bother to know about a topic enough
Yeah.
to be able to speak on it. Because if you know about a topic, if you understand a topic well enough to be able to speak on it publicly, discuss it with someone, then that shows that you have, or at least it shows you appear to have, a command of the topic you're discussing.
Yeah.
You can still be wrong. It doesn't prevent you from being wrong, but it at least shows that you took the time to, at least on the surface, read some of the material and assimilate that into your freaking brain parts to be able to communicate that to other people.
And there's also a big difference within intent. Like someone who is like you're talking about social anxiety, there's a difference between not wanting to speak up and say something because you're not sure how it's going to be taken or you don't want conflict. And what we see online of people intentionally trying to be edgy and offensive to get a reaction out of someone. And
Exactly.
that's not having anxiety. That's you not having the courage to claim and own what it is you say.
I'm not
You'll
even
say
going to say it's that. I'm not even going to say it's that. What I'm going to say it is that's to me, that's an addiction. To me, that I call that being addicted to controversy.
yeah.
That's how I see it. You know, and I see that all too often. Like, yes, I get involved in debate groups not because I care about the controversy or anything like that, but more because I'm looking for those one or two people out of thousands in these groups that are worth having a conversation with, that an actual productive discussion would happen with. Like, you look through the majority of them, it's all just they post memes of stuff that they think proves their argument. Whether creationist, atheist, it doesn't matter. Both sides do it, and it's fucking dumb. And the vast majority of the time, you just scroll past it, or at least I do. I don't care about it. And then every great once in a while, you come across one or two. It's like, hey, no, that seems like a legitimate discussion. Let's talk about this. And then you start talking to the person. And then, unfortunately, in my experience, they usually end up being just another one of those meme trollers, just with a couple of extra steps thrown in.
But that's because you didn't use the proper definition of the word.
Yeah, the proper definition of the word. Okay, I will say that I will argue the definition of something with someone. I very much will, especially if they're going to deliberately use it incorrectly, or if they're going to attempt to redefine a word for their own purposes to make an argument versus what it actually means. And so, yeah, I will hang someone up on that one and be like, no, we need to discuss this. Like, for instance,
yeah, I was referring to the weeks ago.
I know who you're referring to. I was deliberately not acknowledging that. But it's like if I end up having to debate someone over, say, evolution, and they're a creationist, because in what world would I be a creationist? Not this one, obviously.
One day, Drew.
No. Anyways, a couple of things that I would say very much need to be defined before we start that conversation is, number one, what is a kind? Because they constantly want to bring up the Bible verses like, and the animals bring forth after their own kind. What is a kind? That's a definition that is needed to be able to discuss that topic. And giving examples is nonsense. No, an actual definition is needed.
Are you asking me, or are you using this as an example?
I'm using it as an example, but if you think you have a definition, by all means, share it.
It's the days. Creatures of the land, creatures of the air, creatures of the sea.
Okay, so if that's the case, then it's completely wrong from the jump.
I mean, whatever. Why? I don't know why it's wrong, but
Okay,
about
it's factually incorrect when you're talking about things like, okay, like for instance,
correct.
What?
How's it factually incorrect?
Okay, a whale, while it lives in the water now, was not originally a creature of the sea.
Well, where did it come from? If it wasn't always in the sea.
They're actually an evolutionary cousin of pachyderms.
I thought that in evolution that would mean that like a whale beached itself and then decided to. Well, I'm not literally beached itself and decided to grow
Obviously.
legs, but
No,
but
no thing.
water becomes
It's
the
not. That's not backward. See, evolution doesn't go forwards and backwards. Evolution goes from less complex to more complex, and then the complexity. There's also pressures within it, whether they're environmental pressures, genetic pressures, um, predatory pressures, things like that. So, for instance, if there's not enough food on land and some distant evolutionary relative to pachyderms um, is looking for food and they go into the water to get it, more and more there'll be genetic mutations that become more and more beneficial to being in the water versus being in the land, and then through a bunch of successive generations and successful mutations you end up going to whales.
But that's assuming that you believe that whales came from elephants.
Well, let's
So that's not
see.
factual. Like there's no facts that, I mean, they may be in the same family, but that doesn't mean that they came from the, like you can't prove that they came from a shared ancestor. I mean, that does make sense as to why they all have ivory though.
Yeah.
But pianos have ivory too.
Say what?
I said pianos have ivory too.
Okay, a piano is not a biological entity.
But you know, some people, when they sit behind a piano, they can bring it to life.
Haha. Haha.
That was
Haha.
like my weakest joke ever, by the way. That was terrible. I'm ashamed of
You should be. That was bad, okay?
that. That was one of those jokes that no one would actually even consider a joke. They're like, I don't know what that is. Was that like a bad pun or?
Right. So, looking at the evolution of whales, this comes from the University of Berkeley. And I was
I trust
like,
nothing
just
from Berkeley.
what?
I trust nothing from Berkeley.
This isn't the Battle of Berkeley, so it's okay.
Is that a hippo?
Yes, actually, it is. Hippos are were pretty well set up. But anyway, this is talking about whales and whales specifically. So we
Okay.
start with what leads to the hippopotamus and the Indohyus, and this comes from morphological and genetic traits of the common ancestor between Indohyus and all of these, a thick bony wall around the middle ear, freshwater semi-aquatic habitat. So with Indohyus, Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, we see the changes over time. Then we get the large, powerful tail, shorter legs, fat pad in the jaw for hearing, brackish water habitat, so fresh and salt water. Then you have the saltwater habitat from Cucucetus to Rhodocetus, and then the nasal opening starts shifting back behind the eyes. Uh, then the eyes move to the side of the head with Dorodon, and then you have the tail flukes coming in, the very small hind legs, nasal opening shifted even further back, echolocation for hunting. You have Odontocetes, which is your dolphins, your porpoises, and then you have your mystocetes, which is using baleen for filtering food, complete loss of hind legs, and you have your whales. And this takes place over millions of years.
So just to completely ignore the website that you're on right now, I think that one of the big problems we have is different people in society want the easy way out, and they want to use school as a surrogate system for indoctrinating children. Now, whether that's in a religious indoctrination or a cultural and political or social indoctrination,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the problem, is that people are like, well, how can we use state funding and keep kids locked in there between 5 years old to 18 years old and then give them what we think is fair?
All right. Hey, give me
Well,
just a second. I'll be right back.
okay.
You can
So
keep talking, though.
yeah, I'm going to keep talking, and I'm just going to use this to like say whatever I always wanted to say that you would never let me say on the show, because I'm in charge now. Ha ha ha. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, basically people were using it as a. I just realized you could cut this out afterward if you wanted to, so that I would have no true power. You're giving me the illusion of power. This is like predetermined illusionary power, but you're actually in control the whole time. That's messed up, man. How dare you give me the expectation or the perception of free will just to steal it away from me because you were in control the entire time, because you could doctor the past, the future, and the present. What kind of being would do that? Anyway, so yeah, schools. I think a lot of people want those because they want to use that as a way of indoctrinating, but on a secular or state side, you can't really show favoritism to one group over the other. And on a religious side, we really shouldn't be leaning on a school to carry your personal viewpoint. So maybe we just need to strip down school to basic skills and let the other understandings be left to families and churches. I mean, it seems like if churches were more involved with, you know, that sort of process, then they wouldn't want to lean on the school so much to teach these concepts that they want to get passed through the education.
Well, I agree up to a certain point as far as basic skills and things like that. But I do think part of that education is, or part of those basic skills is having a decent command of basic science. I mean, in a multitude of states, the understanding of evolution only requires about a middle school level to early high school level of understanding. That's all it really takes to understand that change happens over time, that populations respond to um, not just mutations, but also environmental pressures and things like that. Things change over time. That's just the core concept of evolution, is that stuff changes. You give something long enough and drastic changes will occur.
I feel like one of the problems I see is there's too much of an emphasis. Like, we have people graduating from high school knowing that creationists don't understand science, which is not necessarily true. There are a lot of creationists that understand science completely. They just have a religious difference in how it applies. And you've got a
The
lot of people.
majority of them are uneducated in science. That's the long and short of it. Majority of the time, they're not they're not educated in science, or they're not educated in evolutionary science to a degree that they actually understand what it is. If they were, they would not be making these ridiculous and asinine arguments such as if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Or you believe we came from a rock, or you believe that pine trees and blue whales are related. Although that last one is actually true. They are. They're both eukaryotes.
But the thing is that no one actually has a good understanding of evolutionary biology that comes out of high school unless they've done the research on their own. All that the school is
Well,
teaching
no,
them.
they're not going to sit there and bomb them with like a full like PhD level education uh with evolutionary biology, but they are going to explain things in such a way, or at least if they're allowed to teach the curriculum and not fought tooth and nail at every corner like they're doing in the state of Texas and fighting against every change in every science textbook, just about. And they'll come out with an understanding of organisms change over time. Small changes over short periods of time, large changes over long periods of time, generally speaking. And that there are a few, uh, arguably referred to as keystone species here and there, that are not going to change as much because they just so happen to be very well suited for the environment they live in. Things like crocodilids and alligators and things like that. They didn't change all that much over 300 or so million years or something like that. And that was because they were very well suited to their environment. But anyway,
I just don't understand why it's more like I get why it's important to understand that, the most fit species will survive, and traits that are positive and that help with your environment will be passed on, and you'll continue to have those. What I don't understand is why it's important to even discuss in a science class why people who think creationism is true are wrong whenever kids graduate high school and don't even know what a double blind experiment is. Like, if you really cared about science, wouldn't you understand how to science and not just the thoughts that scientific people have?
yes. And I thankfully came out of high school with an idea of what a double blind study is. Um, that being said,
I didn't learn that till college. I knew what a control was, but I didn't know what a double blind was.
yeah, it's where not even the people conducting the experiment actually know what the which members are parts of which groups.
There's people graduating today from high school that don't know how to do an experiment. They don't know how to process things through the scientific process of coming up with a hypothesis and then testing it and then reviewing the results. They don't understand this stuff because they're not teaching it. They're teaching
No,
garbage to help you pass a test, and then
exactly.
they're
And that's one thing that I think needs to happen, especially in this state, is the complete doing away with standardized testing because it's forcing teaching to be done to a lowest common denominator, and it's not allowing kids who naturally excel to excel, and it's leaving students behind who may not be as academically gifted as others.
but that's, I think, where the main objection that's not being set. Like, there's a lot of subconscious arguments that go into people's heads whenever they don't know how to express themselves. And I think a
True.
lot of a lot of people that are atheist and religious are very upset that if we're going to indoctrinate kids, well, then you might as well indoctrinate my point of view, because we're not teaching people life skills to actually help them solve issues on their own or to think for
Well,
themselves.
but the point of having evolutionary biology or having evolution, a basic understanding taught in schools, it's supposed to be taught in conjunction with these other things, with critical thinking, with learning about the scientific method, how to properly conduct a study. I think that in possibly instead of um, trigonometry towards the end of a high school career, students should be exposed to statistics and analytical statistical methods more so than trig, although trig is also very helpful. But statistics, at least to me, with how information is presented in today's world, that has become even more important than several other forms of mathematics in my eyes. In that it would prepare a student for looking at a study and be like, well, hang on. I remember learning in Mrs. Terwilliger's uh, junior statistics class that an appropriate sample size has at least X number of people. How many people are in this sample size? Oh, 20? This is bullshit, and throw it away.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I honestly believe we need to actually give kids a more nuanced education in statistics. I
We
mean,
need
or
to
even just a baseline education in statistical analytical methods. There's not a whole lot to them. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just understanding law of averages, law of large numbers, sufficient sample size, things like that. Like, I mean, and law of large numbers is perhaps one of the easiest ones to grasp. It's quite simply the larger the number your sample size is, the truer the more skewed towards the true statistic it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really simple,
Yeah.
but we don't teach kids this stuff. Or if we do, it's in like pre-algebra or a little bit of exposure in algebra 1, but they're not taught about things such as null hypothesis, um, different statistical methods, and then incorporate that into a science education of what is a proper study, what is a double blind study, what is a single blind study, things like that. um,
We need to get to the point where our tests aren't defined a double blind study. Instead, the tests are your company is testing a cosmetic to see if it is toxic. Tell me how you would, uh,
you would test that.
yeah, tell me
How
how
would
you
you
would
conduct that test?
apps so that you could be sure that there was no bias introduced.
Right. Or as little bias as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Or introducing a little bit of philosophy back into schools. Just a little bit here and there.
No.
I mean, you know, we already make them take half a semester on speech and things like that. Throw in a half semester of philosophy, understanding what a logical fallacy is, understanding what proper argumentation is.
We need to get to the point where, as a society, kids can take intro philosophy in sixth or seventh grade across the board,
Yes.
all of them.
Yeah.
And we get to the point as a society where sophomore year, and you and I can disagree on this, but sophomore year of high school, kids should be able to have a comparative religion course and be able to debate their belief or lack of beliefs in a way that is not insulting or accusatory to the other parties.
I agree with that. But at the same time, I would say no to the religious aspect of it, just because it is at least likely as not, if not more likely, that because we're in the United States, because the majority of individuals in this country are Christian, that you're gonna have this essentially gang up situation happen uh, at that level.
Not if you do
Because
an argument where you have to provide the counterpoint to your argument. You have to provide a paper for and against your own views. Not that you're going to be going against someone else in like a 10 against 1 debate, but you need to
mm,
be able to make intelligent arguments for and against your perspective on things that are not just simply, oh, I read a news story about this football team, and do you think that the Astros cheat or not cheat? Like, okay, that doesn't teach you any real thinking. Like, that's
Yeah, no, at that point it's just polling, and then again it goes back to people not understanding how statistics work.
yeah,
And part of that statistical education should be, okay, what is a proper method in which to conduct, say, a questionnaire?
yeah,
Like just posting something on a local news website to say, what are you going to pick out of like 3, 4, whatever, however many choices? Only going to that's only going to represent people who read the newspaper. People who read the newspaper online own a computer, this, that, and the other. It doesn't actually get out to the greatest number of people. It doesn't have the greatest reach, that kind of thing.
yeah. We need to do away with the possibility for kids to make perfect scores on tests. That should be like nigh impossible for someone to make hundreds on major tests. We should have enough questions on there where it's like there's varying levels of, yes, there is technically a perfect answer, but realistically, no one's going to get it. And these are the ranges of unacceptable, acceptable, good, really good. We should have our valedictorians capping out on tests at 98, 99 points. But whenever I was in school, and I know other people were in school, they're making 120 on a test because of all the extra bonus points.
Oh yeah, the valedictorian of my high school had like a GPA on a 100-point scale, had like a GPA of 120. I didn't even know that was possible until then.
Yeah, what's the point of all that? Like you don't get that in real life.
No,
You know,
you don't. You
yeah.
really don't. I mean, and just because you
Outside,
do well academically doesn't mean you're also going to do well, professionally and things like that. Like it's just, I don't know. It's rather annoying in some ways.
so
I
I
tend to
guess the
agree with
last
you on that
thought
education thing, though.
that public education sucks and the United Kingdom is kind of weird. Is that our summary on this topic?
I think so. Yeah, the UK is definitely weird. Um, to quote Kelsey Grammer from the movie, what was it? The Pentagon Wars. It's like we fought a war so we wouldn't have to listen to the effing British. Yeah. But there are other countries on this planet, obviously, and we need to look at them and see kind of what's going on in them, because that can be a bit of a litmus test to measure against things in our own country and realize that, hey, wow, no, this really is that bad. We need to address this. Or, okay, this is nowhere near as big of an issue as people like to play it out to be. Let's look at it for what it is and not pretend it's something that it's not.
Yeah.
That being said, we're moving on to our final story.
We've had what, one story so far?
We've had two. It was
What were
one
the two?
story. It was one story in two parts.
Oh,
It was two separate articles. So I mean,
got it.
yeah. And I'm just going to call this one. Yes, he really said that.
Bronson
And
can come here.
in fact, honestly, we may even end up starting a weekly thing where it's called "Yes, they really said that," and just find some really absurd shit to show people.
Can we bring up my article after this so we can counterbalance it?
Sure, yeah, I can do that. So, everyone, Read the title of the article. Bask in its insanity. Think on it for a minute. Maybe don't think too hard on it, or else you'll probably find yourself in entertaining mental images you never thought possible.
Bronson, don't read it. Not for your eyes.
So yes, a Christian bishop claims that gays are the product of pregnant women enjoying anal sex. Butt stuff. Church of Cyprus Bishop Neophytos Masouras of Morpho claims that a pregnant mother enjoying anal sex will produce a gay child. Cyprus Mail reports the Christian bishop told an audience at a primary school in Akaki, Cyprus. Oh, you just can't make this up.
I would like to clarify that a primary school does not mean kindergarten through third grade. Like
No. I'm not even going so far as that one. The Akaki, Cyprus, it's just way too close to another term. Anyway, that homosexuality is caused by pregnant women enjoying anal sex, declaring, and he says he told an audience at a primary school, so it could have very well been at a kindergarten, but it was a speech or a lecture given to a group of adults.
But, well, no. Primary school in America means kindergarten through second grade.
Yeah.
Other countries, it means high school.
Okay.
Because in second college.
Well, this was published by Patheos, I think. So this may actually be written from an American perspective, but we'll see how it goes. He declares homosexuality is usually a problem transferred to a fetus when a pregnant woman has anal sex and enjoys it. Bishop says it happens during the parent's intercourse or pregnancy. It follows an abnormal sexual act between the parents. To be more clear, anal sex. And then he references Saint Porphyrios, says that when the woman likes that, a desire is born, and then the desire is passed on to the child. I agree with this next statement. The stupid, it burns.
Oh, I thought you were saying that he made another statement that you.
No, he didn't say this. This is just what the article says. It just says the stupid, it burns. I agree with that. I agree with the stupid, it burns. That
Saint Porphyrios is.
I think that's Greek Orthodoxy.
No, yeah, but who was he?
Saint Porphyrios. Let's take a look.
What if he's like the patron saint of like
Saint
charlatanism or something?
I'm not sure that's how they do things in Greek Orthodoxy, but you know. Oh, so he's actually fairly recent. He was born in 1906 and died in 1991.
Okay.
So take this as you will. I'm going off the Wikipedia page because it was the first thing that popped up. Was an Athonite hieromonk known for his gifts of spiritual discernment, a type of clairvoyance which he sometimes called spiritual television. He has a few different quotes.
This is the Orthodox Saint Porphyrios or the Catholic saint? Or
no, this is Orthodox. He's Greek Orthodox. He's Saint Porphyrios Bairactaris.
Of the television.
Yeah, the Kapsokolovite. I'm probably pronouncing all these things very, very wrong.
If you're Greek, correct us.
Yeah. His sainthood was declared by the Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate on November 27th, 2013. In 2017, the Holy Synod of the Romanian Orthodox Church formally approved the inclusion of Saint Porphyrios, the Kavoskalevite, into the church's calendar on December 2nd as well, including his Troparion, Kontakion, Synaxarion, and Icon. Those are all different things. He wrote a few different things. He wrote what looks like 1, 2, 3. There are several books about him. Some of them in Greek, which I'm not even going to attempt to read the Greek Cyrillic. They're talking about his testimonies and experiences, things like that. And let's look at this right here. This is from Orthodox Wiki. So this is a wiki for people who follow Orthodoxy. Says he was born in the little village of St. John Caristia in the province of Ivoya. His parents, Leonidas and Eleni Baraktaris, daughter of Antonius Lambro, christened him Evangelos. He was the fourth out of 5 siblings. Only his youngest sister is still alive and is a nun. Says his family was quite poor, so he left school at an early age to assist his family to make more money. At some stage, he found a job working at a grocery store. Was taught to pray by the Paraclesis by his father and all of the religious matters. He became a monk at the age of 14 or 15. Served in the cell of St. George under 2 spiritual fathers, Father Pantaimon and Father Ianakios. It looks as though he has absolutely no education outside of
being a grocery store clerk.
Yeah, and a priest. Yeah, and so they're okay with quoting him saying that he's right about judging people about having sex. Okay, whatever. A video of the Orthodox Christian bishop making his ridiculous claims have gone viral, with many mocking the ignorant statements. For example, Accept LGBTI Cyprus shared the following comment with the video. According to the Bishop of Morpho, gays are created if a straight couple that happens to be pregnant perform anal sex, and only if the woman enjoys anal sex. Then, if that occurs, such desires are transferred to the fetus. And of course, that is somehow scientifically proven. How are lesbians created? It's a valid question.
No, it's not.
I mean, of that guy, yes, it'd be a valid question to him. It's like, okay, if you're saying that all of this is how a young boy is born gay, okay, then how do you make a lesbian?
It is a valid critique to present as a hypothetical question to that one individual.
Yes.
It's not a valid question for people to ask in general.
Another social media user opined, so, Father, if the woman does oral, will the child become a dentist? This one I agree. This comment I agree with the most. The problem is not this ignoramus. The tragic problem is that there are thousands who believe him. That, I think, is the bigger issue overall. As for the political climate for gays in Cyprus, it is reported that homosexuality was decriminalized in 1998, has rapidly made reforms on LGBT issues, though ultra-conservative attitudes persist, and it does lag behind much of Europe. They banned discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in 2004, while civil unions were introduced for same-sex couples in 2015. However, same-sex adoption is still not legal in Cyprus, and gay people remain banned from military service. Bottom line, Church of Cyprus Bishop Neophytos Masouras of Morpho claims that homosexuality is transferred to a fetus when a pregnant woman has anal sex and enjoys it. Oh boy.
So the 2 ways of looking at this, audience, is one, you can look at it from the biological or the congenital direction that that Drew has given us, or you can look at it from the theological perspective that I have persuaded Drew to go to Wikipedia and look up, which is that Saint Porphyrios apparently has no standing, religious or otherwise, to make these comments. So I don't know why
No,
you would him as the person you would quote.
I know. But hey, if you want to quote someone who's not an authority on something and pretend they're an authority on something, well, welcome to the next Atheist Reformation public service announcement,
No, please don't. Please
which for this week is
don't. It can
mommy's
get worse.
mommy's butt stuff won't make you gay.
I was wrong. It can get worse.
Remember
All
that.
right.
The Atheist Reformation public service announcement of the week. Mommy's butt stuff won't make you gay. Keep that in mind.
Beans, come here. I need
All
to hold
right.
you now.
All right. So you had an article that you put forth. I did not have time to put it in the video description, so I will have to do that later on. Are you talking about the Click to Houston article?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
All right. So to kind of balance things out, something a bit more local to the area.
But also a new interpretation of theology.
Okay.
Someone just went off the rails and defined their own religious understanding, and I can't say that I disagree with them.
Okay, so this comes out of Frisco, Texas, says that a Texas church frees residents of $2.2 million in medical debt. For many in Collin County, mounting medical debt will soon be erased thanks to the generosity of one Frisco church. In just Collins County this week, we purchased $2.2 million worth of medical debt and forgave it all, says Josh Kraft, the executive pastor at Elevate Life Church in Frisco, announced at last Sunday's service. It was amazing to see how our church responded, he says. It really helped fulfill this is what we're here on earth to do, says Mitchell Champa, who was attending church that day. As each new year, the church selects words that will guide them throughout the year. One of our words for this year is transformation. Kraft said, we just want to see true life change happen with people. One of the best ways to change someone's life is to pay off their debt. Okay. They are working with Rest in Peace Medical Debt to do this. The national nonprofit is now in the process of identifying Collin County residents who are below twice the federal poverty line, have debts greater than their assets, or have debts greater than 5% of their annual income, and will help pay off their debt with the money Elevate Life Church donated. It will basically wipe clean the slate for all those different people, Kraft said. Over the next couple of months, people in Collin County will be getting letters that say, hey, we just love you and your debt is forgiven. It's not benefiting us as a church. It's 100% for people we don't know. Saying that John 3:16 is the most well-known passage scripture in the world, arguably so. Says God so loved the world that he gave, and the cool thing is we get the opportunity to really find a way to just be that for other people. Rest in Peace Medical Debt estimates there's currently $740 million of unpaid medical debt in Texas. Okay, so I can agree that this is definitely a positive thing that's been done by a church. At first, I was a bit reticent, thinking it's like, okay, they went and they found all their church members who had medical debt, bought all that, and wiped it out. That's initially where I thought that was going to go, because there have been instances where these debt donations and things like that have happened before, and it's only gone to benefit members of the church, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't say you're doing it in general if you specifically are just targeting your church. That being said, this church didn't do that. They contacted an organization, donated $2.2 million, and that nonprofit is going to identify people in the county of Collin, residents who meet the criteria of below twice the federal poverty line. Debts greater than assets, debts greater than 5% of their annual income. So, all that being said, that's not targeting specifically members of that church, although I'm sure one or two will be affected by it. But it's a positive thing, and I'm all for that.
And they use statistics and science to help them.
They did, yes. They did. And I'll agree, it's a positive thing. That being said, just like I would say the same thing of, or I would expect to be said, I would say the same thing of an atheist group who does something like this. That's not going to make any of their ideas better or worse. And it should. It should not. It should color people's opinion of them as they are doing a positive thing for the community. It should not color your opinion as, oh, because they did this, their ideas must be better than someone else's. You should still judge the ideas based on the merit of those ideas, not just based on what someone else does and says they do it because of that.
But if this is that church's idea of proselytization, then I think that's a form of proselytization that everyone can get behind.
Quite possibly. I mean, but I suppose at that point, that would be a little worrisome for some, because there's going to be another religious group out there that comes out talking about the money is the root of all evil of things, and then come back with, oh, these people are buying congregants. They're not helping anyone. They're buying church members.
Can you imagine,
instead of legitimately converting people?
Yeah. Can you imagine an atheist group that sent out a letter and it was like, by the way, we paid off your debt and we love you, and just remember that you don't have to believe in God. I could see Penn Jillette sending that out. I could see him.
I could definitely see Penn Jillette doing something like that. Just saying, it's I found all these people. Let's spend a couple $1,000,000. All right, and send them a note that says, hey, you don't have to believe in God to be moral or do something good for someone else. Here you go. Your debt's gone, blah, 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 blah. I could absolutely see Penn Jillette doing something like that. Yes, very much so.
See, that's how people need to fight these ideological battles. That's what the arguments need to look like. When you're trying to go out, you don't go out there and yell at someone that they're an idiot or that they're going to hell. You go out there and be like, hey, people care about you.
Yeah, but at the same time,
you have value.
Yeah, but at the same time, I would say that in some ways, that just preaching or just talking about the touchy-feely stuff, the things that make you feel good, as an effort to bring people in and then springing all the other crazier shit on them later, that's disingenuous. You need to be upfront about the whole thing from the jump.
It's going to be impossible to be upfront about everything from the jump, because this is everything, and people have attention spans of 30 seconds, maybe.
True, but there again, you have a claim that large that incurs with it a pretty big burden of proof.
I mean, I'm not trying to prove anything. I was just saying you can't make a TikTok video about this.
I'm willing to bet there are people who will try.
Can you imagine, if you did read the whole thing and then you just sped it up and condensed it? It would just be beep.
Oh, it would be even greater if you did it with an actual video, so you can see the whole thing go with the facial expressions and watch it just skits out.
You wouldn't see facial expressions. You might see like a blur of color moving.
Probably, yeah. I don't know. It would depend on the quality of the camera.
You could see the sun going up and going down as you were reading.
Right? Just don't even stop. Just keep powering through. Wow, that'd be crazy. Oh man. But okay, so we did end things on a positive note. So, any other discussion you wanted to bring up or anything like that? I know you had to get going here pretty soon.
I mean, not really. I'm kind of waiting for a call before I head out.
Okay.
But did we have any comments, or we got no viewers right now, right?
We've got one, but they're a quiet one, it seems.
Hello, viewer.
Yes, hello, viewer. But there again, we did start super early in the morning with this, so I really wasn't anticipating having a lot of people tuning in on this one. I think once we get into our more consistent, noon every week, that's when we have the greatest number of activity, the greatest amount of activity, excuse me.
Yeah.
Whether good or bad, sometimes indifferent, sometimes they're just dumb.
Yeah.
But, most of them jump on because they want to throw shade.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's okay. You can throw shade at me. I'll just kick back, relax, and enjoy a book.
I see what you did there.
Yes, yes, it did. Say what?
I said, and I approve.
I will say it was better than that one joke you did earlier.
Let's forget that existed.
It was so bad, I actually forgot exactly what it was you said. That's how bad it was that I instantly repressed the memory of it.
Yeah, you need to treat that joke like the Protestants treat the Apocrypha and just ignore it.
Or how the Catholic Church treats pedophilic priests.
I was trying to go for like what, move the joke around and put it in a different area?
I mean, but not everybody's going to get the whole Protestantism and Apocrypha thing,
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, it's like, yeah, that was a joke, but the Catholic Church still has issues with that. And that is a real problem that I think we should probably end up discussing one day. I would prefer to be able to do that when I can get an actual Catholic on the show.
Yeah. We don't want to make it seem like we're just
dogpiling on any one belief system or other. I'm an equal opportunity atheist. I don't believe in any of it.
Just to be upfront and transparent, there's a recent news story about something happening with a Protestant preacher. It might have been a Baptist preacher that they moved him around.
Oh yeah.
So you might pull that story up and look at it if you end
might
up
pull that up next week.
Thing. I think that is a problem. People want to protect the group and not make the group look like they're all bad, but their way of doing that is trying to minimize the appearance of the bad actors instead of publicly holding them accountable.
Right, and I think Catholicism was one of the worst offenders of that because you look at how there's the movie that was done about it called Spotlight, but that was about the actual events surrounding the Spotlight group with, I think, the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
That broke that story, that did like some really hardcore investigative journalism on this for a number of years before it was actually even published.
Yeah.
To the point where they were getting pushback from not just from the church, but also from some of the community members. And they were talking about how it's like, oh, people are just hating on this, that, and the other. No, they weren't. Two of the principal members of Spotlight who broke this story were practicing devout Catholics. And they wanted to see people who had broken the law, had committed criminal acts against children, held responsible for what they did. regardless of the outcome, regardless of the implication brought from that. And then they found out that it was a much further reaching, much wider sweeping problem than they even initially thought. They were thinking, oh, it's one or two individuals. And no, it turns out to be upwards of a couple of hundred that had been through the Boston area in just the last couple of decades at that time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, I think at that point, we've kind of beaten all these dead horses into the ground. Don't forget the Atheist Reformation public service announcement of the week. Mommy's butt stuff won't make you gay. Is Harry hiding now?
He is.
Why are you hiding?
Because I don't want to be associated with that.
You helped write it. Don't lie.
Because the alternatives, you were like, how this isn't, I don't know about this. And I was like, well, let's change some of the words and make it less bad. And then somehow
Except you made it worse, because you're the one that decided to change your mom's anal to mommy's butt stuff. That was all you.
That's up to opinion whether or not that's bad.
Let's just say the implication entailed within it, based on some of the communities that that look at alternate views on language. Let's just say you might get some interesting comments because of that.
Yeah.
Let's just say you might get some interesting comments because of that. Anyways, everybody, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to look at more of the information or read the articles in their entirety, the articles are all linked down below. Please remember to follow the Atheist Reformation on Facebook at facebook.com/the Atheist Reformation. All of our shameless plug links are down below. And if you have an idea for the show, or you want to see something covered, or you found an interesting article that we have not yet covered and want to see it make an appearance on the show, please send all those to the Atheist Reformation at gmail.com. That email is also, I believe, down in the description below. It is also on the About page for this channel. So if you want to email, send it there. All right. Any words of wisdom to leave the audience off with today, Harry, other than you talking about mommy's butt stuff not making you gay?
Don't call me daddy.
All right, everybody. Remember, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click the bell icon if that's even available. Woohoo! We got 51 subscribers. Looking forward to another 51 more, and hopefully even more than that as the show goes on. Thank you again for tuning in. Hope y'all have a great weekend.